Hello, today I want to tell you about a man who lives next to a river. Now, it's an imaginary story, so you have to use your imagination. Imagine a rather large mountain, perhaps like Kilimanjaro in the continent of Africa. It's the biggest mountain in Tanzania and it's the biggest mountain in Africa, freestanding mountain. And of course, rivers run down from that mountain. Now, I'm telling you an imaginary story, but as I say, use your imagination. Imagine that Kilimanjaro was covered with glaciers or a snowfield, infinite capacity of water, no problem with the water. And suppose that there was some kind of manager on top of the mountain who decided by a system of levers and so on to put the river water down which river he decided, sluice gates and stuff like that. So there were three rivers, and I want to just describe what happened on those three rivers. On the first river, there was a man and a farm, and on a farm, and he was cultivating and so on. And he wanted the water that was coming down from the big mountain. He wanted that water for himself. Nobody else could have that water. So what he did was he put a dam across the river, and he used all the water of the river for his own use, just him. Probably put a lake and so on, and he just took the pleasure of the river just for himself. So it was a river, not much water going down that particular river, but what water was going down was dammed and going nowhere just for the particular person's use. Now, on another side of the mountain, there was a second river. Now, this second river, the man hadn't dammed the river, but the man was intent on using as much water from the river as he could. In other words, in his garden, he had fountains and lakes and ornamental ponds and stuff like that. I've seen a man on my dog walk who has done this. He can't put anything else in his garden. He's got a pool, he's got a water fountain, he's just built another water kind of ornamental thing. I haven't stopped, I've thought about it, but I haven't actually done it. What on earth is this? And it's just using the water freely. He's got free use of the water, and he just uses it for his own pleasure, for his own occupational use of the family, play, and looking nice and so on. But he used as much water as he could. And that river also didn't have a great deal of water in it, but what was being used, very little went downstream because it was being used for whatever the man could think of, selfishly using that water for himself. And then on the third side of the mountain was another river. Now this river had quite a lot of water going down. And remember, there's somebody controlling by sluice gates and by a series of devices how much water goes down each river. And the man on the third river, he was using the water that he could to irrigate his fields and to grow crops, perfectly legitimate. But then he realised that downstream there were neighbours, fellow farmers, who were not really in as good a position as he was. So what he did was he started digging canals lower down the river to take the water to these other farmers who were his colleagues and so on. And by that means, he was sharing the water in that river, in that third river, digging canals and watering areas that previously were without water. Now, that meant that these other farmers could grow crops and make a living and so on. And it was this man's delight to dig canals and to see his friends downstream who had less water than he had, but they were made accessible to the water was made accessible to them, and they could grow crops. Wonderful. And this man took great delight in digging these canals, and he was always full of new plans. Well, okay, we've got this guy and this guy downstream. Well, if we dug other canals a little bit further downstream, we could get the water of this river even to that area, and that area could become fertile and grow crops, and people could live and survive and prosper in those areas. Thrive, not just survive, but thrive in those areas. Now, this man, who was an entrepreneur and he wanted to do all this work and dig canals and so on, was not in it for his own self-interest. He got plenty of water. He was upstream from the others. And he needn't have done that, but he wanted to share the water in the river with the other people downstream and to help them have water through a system of canals so they could have crops. He was living on the third river. Now, put yourself now in the position of somebody who could control the amount of water going down each river. Think about the first river where the man had put a dam. Well, he got enough water anyway, and it wasn't going anywhere. So the person who was making the decisions at the top of the mountain said, well, we'll just give him what he needs and that's it, but nothing in excess. So there was a very limited amount of water going down that particular river. The second river, where the man had put all the ornamental gardens and ponds and stuff, he was using as much as possible for himself. A little bit got downstream and a little bit more water went through that river, was allowed to go down that river system. But again, it was quite limited. But the man who was digging canals and helping his neighbours and his farmer friends make their area cultivatable, if that's a word, grow crops because of the water supply, the person in charge at the top of the mountain gave him loads and loads of water. The moral is, if with the resources that you have, you share to make other lives better and to distribute what you have, be a distributing centre. That's the message of this particular illustration. Live on the third river. Don't live selfishly. Okay? Good story that, and it's not original, but I thought you'd like to hear about life on the third river. God bless you.